All right, let's get started. My name is Miles Mason. I have a law firm here in Memphis named the Miles Mason Family Law Group. I was forced into that long name because my brother, who's a trust and estate attorney here in town, had already taken the Mason law firm and noted he did not ask me if that was acceptable to me. And then there's another guy in Franklin, Tennessee doing Mason family law. What's up with that? So I had to create a very long name for the firm. I've been practicing for 25 years. I am a certified card-carrying introvert. Not only am I an introvert, I'm to the extreme edge. My journey about learning to be an introvert and how to use that in networking began shortly after I opened my own firm in 1995 with Alan Crone. We found ourselves without any clients and overhead to pay. And it took us 2 years to make $1. And during that process, we learned and practiced everything we could about networking and began to build both of our practices together and separately. This past December, I faced one of the most difficult challenges in my professional career. I hosted the Memphis Bar Association Family Law Section Christmas party. I had taken the bar exam with a fair amount of anxiety. I'd passed the CPA exam on the third try with a fair amount of anxiety. I took the LSATs with a very high level of anxiety. I've tried dozens and dozens and dozens of cases in front of as many different judges across Tennessee and in Mississippi. Never, ever have I felt the terror of inviting an unknown number of competitors into my home to judge me on my interior design, cleanliness, what it smelled like. So I began to go inward as the date got closer and closer. And to manage my anxiety, there's a few techniques I've learned. I get a massage therapist to come to my house. I make sure I get really drunk the night before. So I'm not as much sleeping as I am passing out. And I do occasionally enjoy a very interesting single malt experience. I drink often, just not very much. And the moment that the first doorbell rang till the moment the last person left, I was on about as much high alert, fight or flight anxiety during the entire event. We had a lot of the usual suspects show up. I was lucky in that one of the trial judges had a competing event, a fundraiser, and so not everybody showed up. Only one of the judges that I appear in front of, and he seemed to have an okay time. Now, the point of telling you that story is if you're an introvert, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to be an introvert shortly. I think through my research I found that it can be a tremendous advantage on a lot of different levels. Okay, and we'll talk about why that is. The main test, according to the literature, is do you recharge your battery in private, by yourself and alone, or do you recharge your batteries by being with people that you like and sharing and talking and listening? Okay. I don't know about you, but my definition of personal success is nowhere in particular that I have to be and nothing in particular that I have to do. But even going farther than that is, am I alone? Alone time is very, very important to me. I love to read. I love to travel, love to eat, and experience things. I haven't been to Bordeaux, trying to get there, want to go. Been to Napa, had an ABA conference that I spoke at in San Francisco and swung by and, of course, deducted it. As a CPA, everything is about what I could deduct. I can't help it. My dad was a CPA, two of my brothers were CPAs. So I began to chart out the path that I would take during my career. And I came along this. This is probably, if you haven't seen Susan Cain's TED Talks, I highly recommend you begin with that. It's 15, 18 minutes. It's got 23 million views on TED Talks or TED.com. It's got 9 million views on YouTube. Now, and I also have a lot of these references and additional references both in the written material and on the slide deck. If you want a copy of my slide deck, it's very simple. All you have to do is link with me on or connect with me on LinkedIn, ask for it, I'll email it to you. But what she talks about in the video is more describing the personality. If you have any doubt whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, I'd be very, very surprised. But what you have to understand about others is most introverts, and I think most introverts that are lawyers, are very practiced at pretending not to be. Okay? So I'd much rather do public speaking than find myself at a cocktail party with the Memphis Bar, because then you're forced to talk with people, and I literally actually have nothing interesting in my life to talk about. I'm not kidding. I've got like 4 or 5 topics. That's about it. Oh, at my Christmas party, I did find another lawyer who liked Disney World, and so I was able to burn 15 minutes on Disney. I have 3 children, they're all adults now, but that was the one place in the universe where they pretended to like me, which I'll take. But try this book, it's wonderful. I have in your handout materials a number of excerpts, including how do you know you're an introvert, that sort of thing. Now, I'm a big fan of liberal arts education, primarily because I did not have one. I went straight into accounting after I did a 1.5 years in pre-med in chemistry. But one of my favorite authors is Kurt Vonnegut, and he talks about the river of money. We can slurp from that mighty river to our heart's content, and we can even take slurping lessons so we can slurp more efficiently. This is my slurping lesson, okay? I do believe rainmaking is somewhat magical, but I have studied it because I had no idea how to do it, and yet I found myself responsible for feeding a family. That rainmaking can be broken down into elements, and we're going to talk about those elements shortly, but putting those items together to make the phone ring, there are a number of different components and some that are more important than others. And hopefully I'll get you a couple of ideas to walk away with to help with the slurping. But the main key, I think, is for many of us to deprogram ourselves from what the world tells us about money. We're all taught through all the books, through grammar school and romantic books and rom-coms, that money doesn't make a difference. I disagree. Money buys you security, freedom, independence, education, travel, and doing for others. All right? I'm probably not the best person to go into a hospital room at St. Jude and interact with a child. I don't like children. I don't like dogs. I don't like old people. I don't like members of my own family. A lot of times I don't like my own friends because they're more successful than me. But if I want to do any of these things, including doing for others, which would include giving money to St. Jude, I need to make some. I'd much rather go to I was on a board, part of my networking for Introverts, I was on a board for many, many years, fundraising for St. Jude, the Marguerite Piazza St. Jude Gala. It's a great event. We raised a lot of money for, a fundraiser. I mean, not compared to the board of St. Jude where they do millions of dollars and stuff, but we were raising it locally. And it was a great opportunity to see a lot of friends and network. And at the same time, I get to make some money for St. Jude. And then I'd get a little bit messed up on some single malt and then turn around and bid too much on an auction item, which I figured, that's my good deed for the month, so be it. Depends on how much overpaid. All right, so for rainmaking, I believe you can break it down into 4 functions. 1, networking. 2, professional development. 3, marketing. 4, entrepreneurial skills. So entrepreneurial skills, we'll go backwards. If you ever want to have lunch with me and talk about books that I recommend to increase those skills, I love Tim Ferriss. I love Jocko Willink. I love Dan Kennedy. A lot of different sources to learn about how do you run a business, how do you run a practice. If you haven't read E-Myth for Lawyers, I highly recommend you do that. And that's one great thing about being an introvert. While the extroverts are out partying and talking, I'm reading and I'm learning. Marketing, I have a lot of people come up to me and say, Miles, you're a great marketer. I want to tell them the truth, which is marketing really doesn't move the needle that much. Okay, you can spend money, but if you like to take money and put it in a shredder, go buy a big ad in the Memphis Business Journal and see what that does for you. See how many times the phone rings. It doesn't. Okay, then why do people advertise in it? Frequency. Frequency is an important part of marketing, but it doesn't move the needle easily or inexpensively. Professional development has been, if there was a key to my success, it has been professional development. Early on in my career, I spent a lot of time with the ABA family law section, went to every conference that I could, did their trial school, and learned from the best and had dinner with people that were some of the top lawyers in the country. One of my favorite moments, I'm going to name drop here for a second. I love name dropping. It's an art form. You've got to be good at it. So I'm watching TV Saturday morning, and Katie Holmes is on there, and they're reporting on Katie Holmes' divorce to Tom Cruise, and my buddy Jonathan up in New York was representing her. And I know him through the ABA and text him right there. Are you representing Katie Holmes? And it's been all over the news. I just hadn't seen it. And the fun part about Jonathan is they have pictures of him with Katie Holmes walking down the street, and they're implying he's in a relationship with his client, Katie Holmes. What the media failed to show is that Jonathan's wife is right there with him. That's how he met Katie, is through his wife, who, by the way, is ridiculously beautiful, smart, and I don't like her either. All right. So back to networking. Professional development, I do believe, one of my favorite things in life is the twofer, where you're achieving 2 goals at the same time, where you're marketing and doing professional development at the same time. Probably the king and my biggest inspiration on that was already in here, Lucian Pera. I mean, one of the most annoying things about Lucian, and there are many, is the time I wrote my first book, the Forensic Accounting Desk book, published by the ABA, and I got my first royalty check, and it was signed by Lucian as treasurer of the entire ABA. And I'm like, son of a gun, I thought I was somebody for a second, and I just get topped by Lucian, and he doesn't even know it because it's a printed signature. So Lucian's done a great job of, in his networking, dovetailing it with all the ethics at the ABA level, Tennessee level, past chair, Tennessee Bar. And in fact, he was my inspiration for trying to get on and eventually getting on the editorial board of the Tennessee Bar Journal. I figured it couldn't be a bad thing if Lucian was doing it. So I kind of copied it all, because I did. When I was coming through the ranks, I'd stare at other people's bios and say, what can I do? Steal from them. And that was what I stole from Lucian. So there's a way to do both professional networking, professional development and networking at the same time. For me, it was being in the ABA Family Law Section CLE Committee, and then the big thing for me, of course, was writing a book. If you have questions about marketing or networking along the way, I'll be glad to take them. We've got any number of rabbit holes, and only a fraction of you are going to be remotely interested in this anyway. So if you're one of those few that have an interest and have a question, I'll be glad to answer it. But to me, you have to put all these things together, and you have to study what builds trust. Okay, for somebody to pick up the phone and call you, they've got to know, like, and trust you. And for many legal services, especially when we're talking about where the business is at stake, you've got to be able to go deep in that relationship. One lunch ain't going to get you there with somebody. Handing somebody your business card is just the beginning. It's not going to build trust. So the know, like, trust framework is what every insurance salesman is taught, salesperson from day one. One touch isn't going to work, probably even two. Real relationships is what matters. The way Seth Godin describes this, would this person go out of their way for me? Would I go out of my way for this person? That's kind of your entree level into being able to get a referral from any referral source. Every person has a circle of influence. And so when you meet them, you're essentially meeting their people. Okay? And there are some people with more than others. We'll talk about it in a second. And the concept, I did pay a lot of money to a coaching firm called Atticus. I do recommend it if you were interested in getting professional coaching. And one of the tools that they assigned me early on was identify my top 20 referral sources and make sure I speak to them on a regular basis. 20 is a great number because it's doable. You can have a lunch with all of them. There's usually at least 20 business days in a month. Not that we're going to pack every business day with a business lunch, but if you need the business, it's not a bad way to do it. In fact, this would be a good time to say, of all the networking that I do, the business lunch I've been the most vicious and aggressive at over my career, and I think it's paid off the most. Get to meet new people, get to reconnect. I have business lunches regularly at the Capitol Grill, and very few people turn me down for a lunch there. And that's a whopping 4 minutes from my office. But you've got to work it consistently, because one of the cool things about networking is also a bad thing, is that relationships can expire. There is a shelf life, and you can't just hand over your card, do something for somebody, and expect them to remember you forever. It doesn't work that way. So, how do you identify the best targets to have lunch with? Somebody wrote a book on it, oddly enough, called The Influentials. I'll boil it down to you. You can identify influentials because they're the people you already think about that you want to go to for a referral about car, technology, trips, whatever it is. And there's two basic, of many, there are two most easily identified traits of the influentials. And that is, they keep up with local politics, and they're usually early adapters of new technology. Okay? So your friends that do that are in the influential category, and that's what a lot of marketing firms target their messages to. 1 out of 10 Americans that make 9 out of 10 referrals. So I definitely want to try to go and have lunch. If I get a choice between 3 CPAs, which one's an early adapter of technology and which one pays attention to local politics. All right. But it's a fascinating book about who these people are and the math behind figuring them out. The other thing is we've all worked with time vampires. These are the people, I got a quick question for you, and don't apologize for asking you a legal question in advance. I almost don't mind if somebody apologizes before they ask the legal question, because I know it's coming and I can't avoid it at that point. In a socially acceptable manner. That would be a good seminar. How do you avoid, Well, the good thing, one of the nice things about being me is I don't make any money because anybody likes me personally, so I can actually tell them no. And they go, what? I said, no, I don't want to leave. I'm not working right now, and I really don't care what you think about me. And then I say, I follow up with, why don't you just tell me a lawyer joke instead? Oh my God, quick aside. My favorite lawyer joke I ever got, I was working, third year law student, I was working for a lawyer here in town, clerking, smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day, finishing up my law review, and on New Year's Day, one of my lungs collapsed, and I did not know it. Went to the doctor, went to docs in a box, and they misdiagnosed me because they didn't do a chest x-ray. So I was sitting around for 4 or 5 days in tremendous pain on one lung. Eventually go to my doctor because I was an idiot and should have gone sooner. He sends me down to Methodist. And so the way they treat collapsed lung, and yes, I think I smoked during that period of time, but stuck a tube in between my ribs, and then the lung would reinflate. But right before they did, they found out I was in law school, and the people in the OR, and I had to stay awake to make me cough, they were in there just lawyer joking it up. They had a blast. They knew, oh, this is going to be very painful. Yes, I do volunteer time on economic damages on medical malpractice. So if you do have a question about economic damages, I can help steer you, and I will do it pro bono. Oh, man, lawyer jokes, not my favorite. But these are the people that will drain you dry of energy, creativity. Stay away from them. It's simple, but just identify them as a time vampire, leave them alone. They're never going to move the needle. And all you have to do to identify them is, do you feel awful after you spend time with them? All right, the river of money for professional services. What's the source? Your 20 referral sources. If you got 20 good referral sources, a lot of your financial issues are done. Okay, and I've confirmed that with a lot of experienced professionals across many different industries. So what do you talk about? How do you build your referral sources? You can create a list of your best referral sources today. I like stalking them on social media. Okay, I don't have anything to post. I mean, do you really want to see a picture of my Cavalier King Charles Spaniel? No, nobody wants to see. I don't have anything. Okay, occasionally I get a nice bottle of wine or a nice new whiskey in, but that's not remotely relevant to anybody's life. The key here is, what do you talk about with them? If you've got a referral source already and you're following them on social media, write down what are they doing, what are their passions, causes, and what are their kids' names. You can do 45 minutes on lunch just on that alone. And that's what you need to write down and make sure you know. Repost their crap on social media. Like it. Great for top of mind awareness. Top of mind awareness is what Morgan and Corey fight every day. Top of mind awareness and frequency builds trust. It's a key marketing concept. Not that complicated, that you can do over social media. Just keep in mind your top 20 will make you rich. If your goal is not to be rich, fine. Then do it for others. Be able to give some of your money away. Have a little bit of extra money to travel, for God's sakes. I don't care. Here's a list. You can, again, if you want me to send this to you, I will. Different places to get some ideas on where to put your list, your hit list together. And I have two lists. I have my top 20 and then other people I want to go meet or reconnect with. All right. Now, how do you go about meeting people that you don't know yet? You could do the traditional cold call, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. LinkedIn is a great starter for that. I actually take every lunch that a Christian Brothers High School graduate hits me up on. I don't care if they're 19, 23, 25. I went to Christian Brothers High School. They want to meet with me. I'll take the lunch. Okay, I don't do that with everybody, but those financial advisor types can be relentless. But I'm going to take that lunch because I don't know them. And maybe that may pay off, and I'm going to pay for it because I know they don't have any money. You know, I don't care. But come up with a list of about 50 names. And you know the lawyers that you respect, that you see around, you recognize their face, you know they do good work because of a lot, or they have reputations for doing great work. Call them up and ask them to lunch. What's the worst thing that happens? I'll tell you what the worst thing that happens in a little bit. All right, research them. I do try to read the Memphis Business Journal. I gave up on commercial appeal, but they used to have that business section. I'm going to figure out what they're doing, who's got connections, especially to government. One of my places that I go to that I built my network on was politics. Rewind the clock to 1995, David Kustoff's running for chair of the Shelby County Republican Party. I worked on his campaign, met a bunch of people, traveled around the county, studied what David was doing, became his treasurer, met a bunch of odd people around the county in a lot of different odd places, but also became friends with Jim Strickland, who at the time was another schmo attorney over at Glencler Brown, you know, scraping out a living like the rest of us. And I knew Jimmy from high school, but still, you know. My networking 101 tip, when some schmo lawyer from Glencler Brown asks you to a Super Bowl party, show up. I did, met people. And so now one of my networking tools is find out who's in Team Strickland associated within city government. I've gotten to know quite a few of those people. They're really interesting. They're really engaged. They're fascinating. Does anybody know Doug McGowan in the room? Anybody else? He runs the city for Jim. He's the COO. Fascinating guy. Never going to go out and have a drink with me ever because he doesn't do public. He's in the office at 7, there till 7, and he'll be there until Jimmy's dragged out of the City Hall. But just a fascinating character I would have never met but for Jim becoming mayor. And one of those people that I'm richer in my life because I know him. It's just a fascinating, smart, dedicated person. So developing who you want to meet is a function of spending time looking for who do you want to meet. Research. Know your own story, prepare questions, gather your war stories. One of the things that the experts will tell you is figure out a story about yourself or a series of stories where you're the hero and is remotely interesting, which for me is damn near impossible. So I like to tell stories to my lunch companions where I lost at trial 100-0. Anybody can talk about trials they win. I respect lawyers that tell stories about when they lose. My favorite lawyer moment, it was probably 96, 97. It was back, Bill Gibbons was district attorney general. And I went to a tactile Tennessee Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers seminar, and Bill Gibbons was there. I said, Bill, what are you doing? He says, I need the CLE. Okay, Bill. But Jim Neal got up there and gave one of my favorite openings of any presentation of all times. Jim Neal, for those of you who don't know, was a legend, had a Nashville, Neal and Harwell, about so tall, little brick of a human, big, powerful Southern voice that dripped like molasses. He gets up there, he gets his cigar, bites off the end of it, starts chewing it, getting it ready for the seminar. I have the unique distinction of being the only lawyer in this room to have lost for his client at trial $5 billion. And the client was happy. Represented Exxon in the Valdez oil spill case, that they even got the punitives. I mean, what did the punitives take? About 10 years to roll through the U.S. Supreme Court, and then it got knocked down again. They never had to pay jack squat relative to the potential liability. But the point is, find out your story, find out your lane, so when you do find yourself in a challenging situation, you got a couple of stories to go to, all right? It doesn't have to be winners, but the point is you should be able to share something about yourself that gives a little bit of a glimpse into your soul, all right? Which is hard for me because I don't really have one. I sold it during my first year of law school to the devil, but I got A's in contracts. So all I do is work and write, and yeah. But I'm happy with it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining. Not my style to complain. All right. So the golden question for any referral lunch is, who should I refer to you? Help me help you. Now, I do recommend that be at the end of the second lunch, not the first lunch. There's a kind of a rhythm to the Memphis business lunch. And I do like people that won't talk business during lunch one. I'm totally okay with that. I'm also totally okay if they go straight into business right off the bat. Fill up the water at the table, go. I did have the pleasure of being law partners with Lieutenant Governor Wilder for a couple of years, and yeah, I'm name dropping again. And Wilder hated it when people would call him and ask him how his wife's doing, how Longtown's doing, how's the gin. Hated that stuff. Just get to the point. What do you need? He took so many calls every day that BS moment, even if it was just 30 seconds, was a big waste of his time. Good. Let's go. You want to talk business? Let's talk business. But if you're developing a long-term relationship with somebody, fine. I love to talk money. I love to talk business, Disney. I like to talk how to save money at Disney. I never go at peak. I'm always looking for deals. So if you want to talk money at a business lunch, fine, I'll do that with you. That just so happens to be one of my topics. So I get a young financial advisor rolling in, wants to talk money, wants to talk referrals. I say, well, what organizations are you in? And they always give me the same answer. What do you mean? What boards are you on? What organizations do you volunteer for? So, well, no, I just started. Well, that's how you start. All right, we'll talk more details on that in a second. Questions about them, not that complicated. Give you a nice short list there. Put this on a note card, not on your phone. Never look at your phone during a business lunch. And I do violate that from time to time, and I shouldn't ever. Oh man, and when some kid invites me to lunch and he goes, and he went to Christian Brothers and he pulls out his phone during lunch, I hammer him. Absolutely lay into him. Like, okay, let me get this straight. You emailed me, you didn't call me. You emailed me for lunch. And I agree, I take time out of my schedule to come to lunch with you and you're looking at your dadgum cell phone? And my favorite follow-up question is, does that sound like a good idea to you? Okay. Now, more quick tips, always call. Now, I got some people in my life I can email, but you'll know that. But when in doubt, always call. Always call. And if you get in the runaround, don't worry about it. I probably get a runaround 30% of the time on my calls, whether it's cold call or not. I like to call on Mondays or Tuesdays. I don't know if you guys study this, but one of the tips I had on time management early on in my career is that we all have times of the day that we think the best. You know, if wife goes to bed at 8:30 and I've got a choice between reviewing an MDA, which is 40 pages long, or just working on a real short blog post or editing, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do the complex project after 9 o'clock at night. My golden hour, and usually I'm ready to go around 10 a.m. I need 2 cups of coffee or I commit malpractice per se. I don't know how I make the mistakes I make between 8 and 10 in the morning, but I do, and I know that I make them. So 10 o'clock to 11 is my best hour during the day. I'm the strongest. I'm going to pull out my worst project. What I'm saying is, if you're struggling with networking, use your golden hour for picking up the phone and calling people, because it takes emotional energy to put yourself out there, as they say on The Bachelor, and possibly be rejected. Schedule lunches out 2 to 3 weeks in advance. In the immortal words of one of my favorite lawyers, Lee Rosen out of North Carolina, everything is a disaster. Scheduling the lunch will be a disaster. Taking the lunch will be a disaster. Just assume it's going to be a disaster from the minute you pick up the phone. And that's very much called a Stoic view on life, going back to the ancient Greeks, that if you envision the worst case scenario, you're in good shape because it's not going to kill you. And that's especially for those who are the glass is half empty kind of people, which I'm totally half empty kind of guy. All right, scheduling will fall apart. They will forget, but you can't. Okay, especially if you called them for the lunch. You can't. They're going to forget. A certain percentage of people are going to no-show you. Actually, I consider that a valuable data point and a bonus because I get to have lunch by myself, which is awesome. There's nobody talking to me. Oh, unless somebody's on a cell phone. That's my favorite, when somebody's in a restaurant on a cell phone and I get to listen to their conversation, because I can't help not listening to their conversation because they're usually speaking loudly. At which time I generally pull out my cell phone and say something to the equivalent of, hey, I'm on a cell phone in a restaurant, I'm really cool, and I don't care about who hears what I have to say. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. My wife really likes it when I do that. All right, have your plan for conversations. Don't forget kids' causes and passions. If you don't know correct business etiquette, find it. It's not intuitive, and I'm going to know because I'm Miles Mason and I'm a stickler and an a-hole. I'm going to know if you don't know where to put your fork at the end of the meal. Okay? One of the things I did have a chance, one of my biggest mentors and biggest business influences was I got to work for Bob Mednicow before I went to law school. You don't put your hands in your pockets on the sales floor if you work for Bob Mednicow. All right? As a gentleman never puts his hands in his pockets. okay? Because there's only one thing you're going to be doing. All right? I know. He didn't say that, that's my addition. But the point is, I had to learn how to stand like this. I'm working the sales floor for Bob Mednicow. Now, business manners, they're online, YouTube it, know where to put your fork, know, don't, when you put your butter on your bread, you don't slather it on like peanut butter. No selling on the first lunch. Goal is friendship, be attractive in a business sense. Don't smell weird. Check yourself. Reconnect often. One lunch ain't going to get you anywhere with anybody. All right. Stoicism is your friend. Envision the worst case scenario. Fail and fail again. All right. So my favorite fail moment, when Alan and I moved into Clark Tower 2002. We had a big accounting firm in the building. And I'd been trying to catch this guy in the elevator, the main partner, and trying to track this guy down to get his business and get some referrals going, get a lunch. So it took me years, and we never really were in the elevator at the same time, and then when we were, there were too many other people, whatever. So I finally got the nerve up. I cold called him. He agreed to give me coffee 3 weeks out. Great. So I take one of my associates, go to his office. I'm Miles Mason, here to meet with the partner. Fine. Have a seat. Nothing. Receptionist doesn't announce me to anybody. I cool my heels for a good 25 minutes, me and my associate. Then we get taken back, not by the staff person eventually, to his office. He says, look, I'm sorry, I'm really busy. I don't have much time for you. What do you want? So I was like, great. I'll give my spiel. I'll give my pitch. I'm a divorce lawyer here in town. You work with a lot of different people. I'd love for you to consider me for referrals. He says, hold on a second. Takes a phone call from David K. Wood. Fine, it's David K. Wood. No problem. Another 5 minutes go by. I'm like, I'm a CPA too. I know a little bit about forensic accounting. I teach it. I know you do forensic accounting occasionally and testify. I'd love to get to know more about your practice. Phone rings again. Kay Turner takes the call. And he says to me directly, I only take cases from a select few attorneys. So in front of my associate, I feel this tall. Okay? Now, I tell that story as often as possible, and in accounting circles, use the person's name. But I say that in that nothing happened. So I never got any referrals out of this guy. Big deal. Big deal. I failed. I fail often. Networking is about failure. Accepting failure. Just like one of the things you've got, it is so hard. I've got a 19-year-old daughter, and she's filling out job applications in Chattanooga. I told her to put down on the job applications that she'd actually coordinated international multi-district litigation, and she's like, no, I'm not putting that down. That she hasn't coordinated international multi-district litigation. So, but the point is, when you fill out an application, at any point in your life, you've got, a 1 in 100, 1 in a 200 chance of getting a job? Big deal. We're used to that as professionals. Deal with it. Same thing with this. lunches are about hit and miss. Don't worry about the misses. Don't worry about the person who doesn't call you back, because the worst call isn't the person that doesn't call you back. It's the one that does call you and wastes your time because they're boring like me. And I network a lot with CPAs. CPA's been very, very good to me in my practice. But I cannot stress enough how important it is to expect to fail and do your best anyway. Right? Small wins. Your goal as the introvert every day is small wins that lead to big victories. First time I sat at a class action negotiating table, I thought I was going to throw up. Alan and I were up in southern Indiana, we were just in Kentucky, across from the Indiana border, negotiating our first class action. I was going to throw up. It was a small class action. I mean, there's probably only 500-600 employees at issue there. It was an overtime case. But that small win led to much bigger firm victories. And we've all had those small wins. God help you if you're in your career, you have your biggest victory in your whole career in year 2. Unless, of course, you cash out and let go of your law license and head to Montana and start living in a shack, which would be heaven for me, but that's neither here nor there. But the sense of dread is your friend, okay? And if you have a failure, like I did with my guy, the first thing you should do is just get back on the phone and call 3 more CPAs, okay? Which I did. Be confident. If you have a problem with self-esteem, there's many books out there to help you with that, and tips, traps, techniques. And never underestimate the number of people interested in getting to know you. There's a lot of good, fun, genuine people out there. Don't underestimate it. Have a plan for rejection. I will never forget my rejections. I have a list in my head. I collate it, put it in order of importance and alphabetically. Rejection is just part of the game. Okay? The message that I leave: hi, I'm Miles Mason. I'm a divorce lawyer here in town. Please call me back. Here's my phone number. Not that complicated. Now, one of the key moments in the first call is, what are we going to do? And I'm going to say to the person on the other end of the phone, where do you want to go have lunch? And what they're going to say is, no. They're going to say, I don't know. They never know. I don't know. Yeah. So I'm going to say, if they come back and say, well, where do you want to go? I say, well, I eat regularly at the Capitol Grill. And they're like, yeah, good. Now, if they're downtown, then I'll try to go, I like Cafe Society for a good business lunch. I don't know how they stay in business, but it's usually not crowded. It's a little bit lengthy of a drive from East Memphis, but I'm going to try to get but the downtown people are pretty good about knowing where they like to go, and I'll truck downtown if I'm making that call. I have my suggestions list, and I'm going to pick up the tab. If I'm inviting, if somebody else invites me and they just are damn certain they want to pick up the tab at Capitol Grill, that's fine. 2 principles in mind. If you want to be good at networking, just be good at listening. Introverts can do that. I can listen. Not gleefully, but I can still listen. I promise. And then an interested introvert is a better networker than an interesting extrovert, which is really, really true. I can out-network a lot of extroverts, although I never make any points for being friendly, but it's still possible. When it feels like a bad fit, it's a bad fit. Just walk away. You're going to have plenty of good, nice people to network with. Enjoy that. All right. Now, if you are a believer in transactional relationships, what do I offer somebody? What do they offer me? That's fine. There's plenty of people that view that in the world, and financial advisors are right up at the top of that list. Don't underestimate that you can reciprocate with friendship. Okay? That has value. If it's not valued by the other person, just being a nice person and being a friend, what are you going to do with that? All right? Then they're probably not going to be somebody you want to work with anyway. And what I tell the young people is that the best and highest use of a relationship with me is not my charisma and charm, but my network. Having practiced in Memphis for 25 years, I know a person or two. And what's fun about being a divorce lawyer is I know people in weird places. You know, they're not all judges. Some are electricians, HVAC. I mean, I got connections in a lot of weird universes. I know what websites married couples go to together. I didn't know I would learn that practicing law, but I do. Makes for a very interesting discussion about fault when couples go to the same website. So I know just all kinds of odd people. And I used to be, when I was more active in the Republican Party, I had contacts in all the different clerk's offices, especially county clerk. Back in the day, I could get license plates for people and stuff. I didn't have to wait in line. I don't have those connections anymore. But the point is, I think connections up high and connections up low are equally important sometimes, depending on what you need. Okay? And I've had connections at too high of a level before. When I was law partners with Lieutenant Governor Wilder, his connections were with the business owners and the elite, not necessarily the decision makers about who hired the lawyers, which kind of stunk because we wanted to be outside counsel at AutoZone. We worked very hard to become one of AutoZone's outside counsel. Never happened. Okay? Never happened. But that's okay. So back to this, another form of currency, if you view these relationships as transactional, is just good old-fashioned access. All right? Having somebody to pick up the phone, give a call to, and ask a question. All right? One of my favorite people on that is a guy named John May. John is a CPA over at Dixon Hughes Goodman, used to be at Ray and Ivy. He's got a pretty deep Rolodex. And he's the kind of guy that's going to know the difference between a good contractor and a bad contractor that comes to your house, which is very valuable information to know when you got roof rats, which there's like 30% of the houses in Memphis with roof rats. All right. Don't make any sudden movements. Self-disclosure process is the element that takes us from being acquaintances to business associates to friends. Don't overshare. Not everybody needs to know that I know the pricing structure for professional accompaniment in Las Vegas. I probably shouldn't share that at lunch one. But I had to learn because it's, what lawyers need to know. How do you go to Vegas to get into trouble? How much cash do you need? Do you know? $3,000 to $5,000. And you don't want to try to go get cash in Vegas because you don't want to put it on a credit card because they're going to charge you a lot, okay, to get $3,000 to $5,000. So you need to go get $3,000 to $5,000. And most people Don't have $3 to $5 grand laying around, and that's kind of your minimum to do the kind of things you would think you would want to do in Vegas, okay? I have to know that as a divorce lawyer. Because the women always say, well, he goes to Vegas all the time for the conventions. Well, yeah, so do I. So we got to look for some kind of withdrawal, or where did the paycheck go? If it's not going into the joint account regularly, we need $3 to $5 grand in cash to disappear. If he's a playa in Vegas, you don't really make anything happen for under $3 grand. And if you want to invite me to lunch and I'll tell you how I came about that information, I will share it with you. It was very fun. All right. Introverts are planners, but start your plan immediately. Don't wait. Nick Saban talks about the process. I view my career and career development and network development as a process, not a result. One of Saban's favorite phrases and his weight room person, what do you do right now this minute is what matters most. Don't delay. If you know you need to call 5 people for lunch, leave here today and call 5 people for lunch. Set it out 2 to 4 weeks in advance. Success is a mindset. Study about success. How do you get off your butt, make the phone calls, develop the relationships, show up to where you need to show up? Never focus on the last play or the scoreboard. It does not necessarily translate into income today, but it is the best way. If you need to jack up your income over time, networking is the place where you can get the best bang for your buck. Head trip stuff, definitely have a mentor. I've been very fortunate to have several. If you need professional coaching, Atticus does lawyers. There's a lot of professional coaches out there. If you haven't done it, I highly encourage it. Mastermind groups, Vistage, Glazer Kennedy, Inner Circle, a lot of different types of groups you can join out there. All you have to do is ask. Media consultants, has anybody ever hired a media consultant in the room? I have. It was a lot of fun. I got a lot of good TV exposure out of it. Put those on my website. There's a few in town that I highly recommend. For those of you who don't know this, most of the people that you see on CNBC, if they're not from New York, they're paying to play. Okay, they pay a media consultant to get onto Fox Business. It's roughly $2,500, $3,500 a spot. Not that complicated. All right. For everything you want to do, there's a hack or a price. TED Talks, podcasts. I love the podcast Unemployable. It's about entrepreneurs and actors that self-described cannot be employed by somebody else. Of course, Tony Robbins, Seth Godin, Guy Kawasaki. Fear is normal, failure is common, resilience is required. One of the things, and I'll leave you with this tip. I was at a power dinner of a bunch of Memphis elite power players, people that are on the phone, first on speed dial of elected officials to go raise them money. And I don't get invited to those events all the time, but occasionally I do. And when I do, I show the F up. And one of the other people that was at the table with us, who had never been invited to this group before, bowed out before the checks came, which I understand if they're trying to get out of paying, which this person did. But most importantly, they didn't go for drinks after. We went over to Fox and Hound and had cigars outside, weather was fine, and had beverages. Well, that's where the good stuff happens, is the after party or the after event. If you get invited, go. If you're tired, slam down a Red Bull and vodka, I don't care. Whatever gets you going, the triple espresso. Make sure you go to the after party. Again, final pitch, if you want to have lunch with me, connect on LinkedIn. I'll be glad to buy you lunch and listen to your marketing plan and go over it with you and give you my thoughts. But if nothing else, I'd love to hear from you and like to know your thoughts about the presentation today. Thank you very much.